What's up, guys? It's your boy JK Primetime, back here with another video. Now today we're going to look into quarterback Lamar Jackson out of Louisville. He's regarded normally as a late round draft pick this year. I think, in my opinion, by a lot of people, he's really underrated. He's not really given his due respect. And also, I'm going to give a comparable prospect, at least not necessarily skill-wise and play style, but at least controversy-wise, normally debated about, him and Josh Allen. I'm going to compare the two and really show that Lamar Jackson shouldn't be given as much scrutiny and just, should be regarded more highly than he actually is. So at first we're going to look at Lamar Jackson in particular. 2016 Heisman winner, Maxwell winner, Walter Camp Award, of course. Third in Heisman voting in 2017. He's a great dual threat quarterback. His stats improved every single year he was playing. So, like in 2015, he had 135 completions out of 247 attempts. So that was a 54.7 completion percentage. He threw 12 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. He also rushed for 960 yards on 163 attempts for 11 touchdowns. In 2016, he upped all his numbers. So he threw 230 completions out of 409 pass attempts, had a 56.2% completion percentage, 30 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, ran 260 attempts for 1,571 yards and 21 touchdowns. This was his Heisman year. And then in 2017, he ended up upping his passing yards and all his passing totals pretty much. He had 254 completions out of 430 attempts, a 59.1 completion percentage, 27 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. He also rushed for 1,601 yards on less rushing attempts at 232, but had less touchdowns at only 18. Now, when it comes to Lamar Jackson, like I said, he's a great Heisman threat. He's a talent that I don't think any quarterback can match at this moment. His running ability is just, par to none. I mean, he's being talked about as getting moved to other positions like wide receiver, which in my opinion, I think he is definitely a quarterback. I don't agree necessarily with those. Either way, I'll get to that a little bit later. But when it comes to him, team success-wise, Louisville 9-4 in 2016 with a 7-1 conference record, 8-5 in 2017 with a 4-4 in conference record. So obviously the team did regress. With his strengths, he does have he doesn't have the best arm strength out of everyone in the draft, but he definitely has good arm strength. He kind of has a whip to his throwing motion. It's to me reminds me of Michael Vick-esque. It's more of like a little whip to it. He does have good power though. He can make a lot of good throws. He doesn't like I said have the best, but he definitely has good arm power, arm power, throw strength. Now, some of the knocks on him, he overall in general he's had a offense more catered to his strengths as a player. In 2016, he had plenty of options going through in his Heisman years. You could tell with the more the rushing totals, at least with the amount of rushes that he did, and less passes, of course. In 2017, especially leading up to that season, it was definitely covered a lot that their coach was really trying to focus on try to make the offense a little bit more pro style to help Lamar Jackson's development as a quarterback. He did end up spending more time under center than he did the year before, but even with that, he did the offense was majority shotgun and pistol heavy. There was their main money plays almost. They did incorporate multiple concepts, so he does have some ability to be able to look through multiple concepts within the same plays or through a list of plays. Also with him, he's very iffy accuracy, of course. He's not the most accurate guy. A lot of people also give the comparison to a guy like Deshaun Watson, who was seen as the same way, who had seen more of that. His main knock on him was improving his accuracy overall. He does very well, even though he can run very well. He does a good job at staying in the pocket. That kind of leads to also a knock on him, that he sometimes takes too long in the pocket, which is something that we'll definitely have to improve on. Being, having more speed, having more speed to him when he gets to the NFL. Another knock on him is that he also had a hard time hanging on to the ball. He had many fumbles over his only 38 games. I think he ended up having 20, maybe 30 fumbles, somewhere in that range, with, only like 30, 40 games played overall throughout his entire college career. But overall, looking at him, he's definitely looked at as a good quarterback. And I can easily see why he's top 5, but I really think he should be rated higher than that, and maybe even drafted higher than that. Now we'll look a little bit more at Josh Allen, who's another quarterback prospect who gets a lot of controversy around him. A little note as well before I start getting into Josh Allen is that both these quarterbacks, I'm giving a very streamlined kind of look at them. I'm giving very brief. You could go into so many different details on strengths and weaknesses to them, but I'm just trying to give a basic overview of what these quarterbacks have to offer. So when it comes to Josh Allen, he only has 2 years of starting experience. So in 2016, he had 209 completions out of his 273 attempts, so that was 56% completion percentage. He had 3,203 yards. He had 28 touchdowns and 15 interceptions. In 2017, he had 152 completions out of his 270 pass attempts, a 56.3 completion percentage. He had 1,812 yards, 16 touchdowns, and 6 picks. Now, one thing to note is that he did play less games than the year before. Even though he did end up throwing similar completion attempts, I think he actually ended up playing. He only played 11 games that year, so he played 3 less games. With him, he has a cannon of an arm. His arm is amazing. He's, I think, easily the best arm strength of the entire draft. He's definitely seen as the guy potentially with the highest ceiling out of all the prospects. I mean, model measurables. If teams, when they want to find a quarterback, they look at a guy like Josh Allen. He's 6'5", 233, has some running ability as well, albeit not like Lamar Jackson. He can get out of the pocket and he definitely has some mobility to him. He does rely a lot on his arm, of course, because he does have the arm strength. Actually, because he is able to get out of the pocket. A lot of there has been some knocks on him and that he's very hyper in the pocket, so he's more prone to leave an empty pocket. He doesn't have necessarily that patience as much the other guys to be able to stay in the pocket. He's inconsistent on his touch throws, and you could tell that he relies more on his accuracy because on some of the screens and the really short throws, especially behind the line of scrimmage, he does overthrow sometimes his receivers. When it comes to him, he did play in a weaker conference. He played at Wyoming, so he went with he played in the Mountain West Conference, which obviously is not as much as necessarily an ACC, which has teams like Clemson, Florida State, other teams like that. And when he did face these these more higher performance teams or more talented teams, especially on their defenses, he definitely struggled more. He didn't win as much. He had definitely more struggles. But overall with him, he definitely has some kind of potential to him, but I think he's definitely seen more highly than what he should be. The big thing with him is his completion percentage. He's under that 60% threshold, and even with his second year, his completion percentage only improved 0.3%. His yards per attempt was lower. It went from 8.6 to 6.7, which is definitely a huge difference from year to year. All right, and now we're going to look at the two prospects where we could compare them over here. So to start off, as you can see, both their completion percentages never topped 60% throughout their career. So some things I found was that when you're looking at them, the best QBs with under 60% completion percentage are Josh McCown, Tyrod Taylor, Shaun Hill, Derek Anderson, Brian Hoyer, and Kyle Buller. Also, from 2000 to 2017, the best quarterbacks to complete their college career with a completion percentage of less than 58% were Ken Dorsey, J.P. Lousman, Jay Cutler, Kyle Buller, Matthew Stafford, Patrick Ramsey, and Tyrod Taylor. Most of these quarterbacks, this is the big thing, most of these quarterbacks improved their completion percentage year over year and finished with a season near or above the magical 60% threshold. Now, when looking at these two quarterbacks, Lamar Jackson fits the bill. Started off at 54%. He went up to 56 and then ended at 59. So he ended his career at right under that 60% threshold and got better year after year. With Josh Allen, he went up 0.3% and stayed at 56% through his career. Only 2 years, but still, completion percentage stayed the same, and it wasn't that close to the 60% threshold. Now, big thing with that is when you're looking at these quarterbacks, 2 quarterbacks that I could see him being, I could see Kyle Buller, I could see Blake Bortles. Now, Blake Bortles is more because of the pro comparison, model measurements, things like that. Kyle Buller, he's a guy with big arm strength. I can see the comparisons. If he became a Matthew Stafford, I think that'd be a pretty good career for him. I think that's at his peak. I think he's a Matthew Stafford. That's not a bad comparison. He's just not, I don't think, a star. But still, people will argue this because when you look at it, people first say that, Josh Allen doesn't have the talent around him. He has lower talent, worse receivers. That's partly true. 2016, he had an upperclassman receiving core. Most of those guys graduated in 2017. He had a less experienced core around him receiving-wise. But if you look at, for example, how many of their attempts were dropped by their receivers, Lamar Jackson has an 8.5%, while Josh Allen has a 4.8%, which is a comparable of 33 to 12. Now, Josh Allen's 4.8% was the second lowest of the top 5. So, looking at that, and then if you really want to make the argument when it comes to talent around them, in Jackson's Heisman season, he didn't have the best O-line in general out of any of his years, but 2016 and their pass protection was horrific. If you look at just Houston in general, one of their last games of the season against Houston, they allowed 11 sacks. 11. I don't think there's that many. I haven't heard of that many games where you have a team allowing 11 sacks. And Houston is not the most well-known team. It's not like they were going up against a Clemson, like a Bama, like a top defense. They were going up against Houston. They allowed 11 sacks. So, as much as you can make the argument that Allen had lesser talent around him and less receiving core, people don't make the same argument for Jackson, even though they should, because it shows you that his receivers, even look at his pro day, his receivers, that's supposed to be easy catches for his, easy passes. It's supposed to just help. Those guys were dropping passes too, and you could tell he did not have the best receiving core around him. And people don't show that for Lamar Jackson, in which they should. Now, one thing for Jackson, yes, they need to make more of a system around him, but with that, any good coach can pull that off. They can make a system around him. When you look at a guy like Vic and them, they had, those mobile quarterbacks had those things in place to benefit that aspect of their game. And that's how Jackson's going to hit his true potential. Now, again, he needs to go to the right system. But you can say that with any quarterback. Josh Allen needs to go to the right situation around him. If he goes to the Browns, I don't think that's going to be beneficial for him. Because I think he needs multiple years of development. He's a guy that needs to sit 2 or 3 years with a clipboard and really focus, tie up his mechanics, prove his accuracy to really become the best he can be. So I think that he'd be best suited as like a Giants. The Giants have Eli. That's 2-3 years at least where he's sitting behind a quarterback, is able to mature. And Eli Manning is, overall as a career, at worst, a solid career quarterback. So that's, I think, what Josh Allen needs. Lamar Jackson, again, also needs development. I could see him going to a team, especially later in the draft, possibly a Jacksonville, which they can, suit a scheme around him. Pittsburgh, they have Ben Roethlisberger. New England, they have Tom Brady. So the system, I think, doesn't really compare as much. Another thing is that a lot of people say that Josh Allen's scheme around him is more of a pro style, and so he has more throws down the field. If you look at both those quarterbacks, Lamar Jackson had 62 of his passing attempts behind the line of scrimmage. That ended up being roughly around 15%, roughly. Josh Allen had 48 of his passing attempts occur behind the line of scrimmage. It ended up being around 19%. So Josh Allen has more throws behind the line of scrimmage than Lamar Jackson does. Um, both those QBs did have far less of had not maybe not far, but they had fewer of those easy throws compared to the other top quarterbacks. Baker Mayfield is a guy that's towards the top of that with his scheme at Oklahoma, which is always always pointed out that he has easier throws because of the system he plays in. But even if you look at deep passes, Lamar Jackson had an adjusted completion percentage of just over 39%. Josh Allen's deep adjusted completion percentage was 35%. So if you look at it, right now as a prospect, Lamar Jackson is better than Josh Allen. Josh Allen does have some talent. He has things that you can't really improve. He has great measurables. He has a great arm. Some of those things are things that you can't really improve. That's something that you just either have it or you don't. And just overall between these two, there's so much hate or so much downplaying of Lamar Jackson. I mean, people are saying he should move to receiver, that he isn't a quarterback. Right now, if I had to pick between the two, to be honest, I would pick Lamar Jackson. I think that he shows that he is more. He's more of an he's more of an in the pocket guy too. He has the speed, which makes him a dual threat, which can give you so much potential as an offense. He's gotten better as a passer, so he shows the potential to be able to improve. So to be honest, when I look at Josh Allen, I see a Blake Bortles. I see a Kyle Bullard. A lot of people love to say that he's Wentz because he's from a small school, but I don't see it. I think Wentz was a better quarterback. He made a seamless transition to the NFL. I don't think that, Josh could do that. They have similar size, good arm, but I really don't think that that's really good to do. I mean, overall, he definitely fits more of the vertical passing game, which is can kind of be put more towards a pro style. But even with that, I mean, when you look at the comparables, to me, Josh Allen, like I said, the other two, Blake Bortles, Kyle Bullard, I think at best maybe Matthew Stafford. When I look at Lamar Jackson, he's kind of hard to even get a comparable for, but the only guy I can really see him being is Michael Vick. But still, there's been coaches that have been saying that you're not really going to find a comp for him. There's some people that have said that he's between a Marcus Mariota and RG3, which, to be honest, is a pretty good comp. If you look at RG3 before he got injured, RG3 was a great quarterback. That option worked perfectly for him. They put a system around him, and he excelled. If he didn't have his injuries, he would have been regarded right now, I think, as a top 15 quarterback. So if you get that Lamar Jackson, I definitely think that's good. And to be honest, I think that if you put him in both of them in the right system, I think Allen has a lot more of a bust potential to him because he could just be a guy that has a great arm but never is able to get the accuracy down to be a good starting quarterback. I feel like he could be a guy that could just be he could honestly be a guy that could be a career backup. I think with Jackson, he fits a little better overall as a prospect and even as a quarterback prospect because, again, you could move positions with him. Right now, his frame's kind of lean, so a receiver I don't know about. But in general, I think you could easily see him as a guy that can be a better, I think, to be honest, I think he's a better NFL quarterback or prospect than Josh Allen at this moment. And people really aren't giving him that recognition. Now, a lot of people could bring up the whole race factor. I really don't think that's part of it. I think it's more play style because, I just think it's more play style. If you think about the top, African-American quarterbacks, I mean, Jameis Winston, he was more of an in-the-pocket guy. He did have a running ability to him. Michael Vick, very run-heavy. RG3, really, more run-heavy. So it's just the play style that the past couple quarterbacks, the top, at least African-American quarterbacks have had. I think it's more of a play style than necessarily just their skin tone. I think people put a little bit too much context in that whole race argument. But overall, this is why, just looking at those two, and I'm not bashing Allen. I think Allen's a decent prospect, but I think that Allen is overrated. Jackson is underrated. And I think this is why, even when you're looking at the two most controversial guys with the kind of, if you look at them, and some people look at it as the biggest boom or bust guys, when you look at it, they're the two guys, and to be honest, Jackson is a better prospect. So tell me what you guys think. I know this pretty much turned into a long rant about how I feel about those two quarterbacks, but I really feel like that Jackson isn't giving the credit that he deserves. Tell me what you guys think. Overall, subscribe to see more content. And besides that, I'm out.